maybe in 10 years time we're all plugged into machines like Elon is wishing us to be. So and maybe it's just a human brain interface. I don't know how the world will sit in 10 years time, but obviously the capability is the most important thing, and then technology is subservient to that.
Welcome to PEP, the Protect Europe podcast, where we interview founders and investors building the technology that protects Europe's values, way of life, and infrastructure. Today's guest is Urho, the founder and CEO of Distance Tech, one of the most innovative companies building in the Nordics today. They take data and place it on any sheet of glass, whether that's in a plane, a car, or an armoured vehicle. Join myself and Vesa as we dive deep with one of the most impressive serial founders in Europe today. Big thanks for joining us. Let's dive into the vision, right? So you have an amazing company in distance technologies, only founded a few years ago, but let's wind the clock forward. Let's presume that it's 10 years time, it's 2035. Everything has gone amazingly. You've not put a foot wrong. The team has worked every single hour that God sends. Execution, amazing. Destroyed the competition. It's 10 years time. Where are we? What has happened? Paint us that kind of future vision that we're all hoping we get to.
What a wonderful question. So thanks for not prepping me for that one. From how I see it is that hopefully we, together with our partners, which would be defense primes of today and the future, we would have been able to a coherent, you could say, operating system layer for all of the both autonomous systems as well as then the human element, where you have a coherent experience throughout Europe, whether you're in Spain or UK, Finland, Sweden, Germany, France, you have everywhere one coherent experience, something that as a defending body, you absolutely need to be able to communicate coherently with everybody. And maybe above all, our vision at Distance is to make that possible and fuse the reality of the soldiers with this C2 information layers from all of the different varied sources of today, and then bring the human element on the parity with the autonomous system on the information flow. So that would be our job to harmonize that element, and I hope we succeed with that one. It's not exactly well aligned today yet.
Yeah, and again, don't worry, you succeeded perfectly. We're in the future now.
Oh,
it works brilliantly. Every startup succeeded, etc. But let's just unpack that. So that coherent layer, is that on the glass or is that somewhere else?
I mean, that's going
to... How will it be exposed to the person?
I think the technology should not be on the way of capability. So it needs to be on the optimal way for each use case, each vehicle, each wearable device. Maybe in 10 years time we're all plugged into machines like Elon is wishing us to be. So and maybe it's just a human brain interface. I don't know how the world will sit in 10 years time, but obviously the capability is the most important thing, and then technology is subservient to that.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And just kind of then, what size of company are we talking? Because this sounds like a big vision, and it sounds like an integration vision and a layer vision. Are we talking 1,000 people in this company, 10,000 people in this company? Are we Microsoft sized? Where do we end up in 10 years?
I would like to see still like a small core team, maybe 5,000 people, something like that. And then working together with the partners to bring the industrial scale. That could be like hopefully together with the defense primes, over 100,000 people would be working towards the common goal, maybe even more, maybe hundreds of thousands of people together. But, I would hope that still our company would be like a small size, like just thousands of people, not tens of thousands.
Sure. And again, you can be the OpenAI, high leverage, we don't have a big team, but we create a big effect kind of play. And again, I think the numbers really matter. Like, TSMC is what, 80,000 headcount, right? So this 80,000 headcount company, what, 7th, 8th, 9th richest company in the world by market cap. That's the sort of impact that they're creating.
Yeah, and it's a small company, like headcount wise for the impact. NVIDIA, like even more ridiculous how small team they actually have for the impact of, I think they're still the largest company in the world, right? Or highest valuation.
And it's scary. There was someone sent me an infographic the other day, which is NVIDIA's market cap versus the market cap of countries. If you take the stock market, publicly listed companies in Germany, UK, etc., NVIDIA was bigger.
Yes.
So we want one of those. Okay, let's go from the future and let's pull back to the present. Sadly, it's 2025, or good, it's 2025. What do you need to execute on today to deliver against that future vision? So it's always that challenge with any founder CEO. Tomorrow, today, tomorrow, you got to know where you're going, the big exciting vision, but you've also got to execute brilliantly today.
Yeah. So happily enough, we're executing two markets simultaneously. We're executing on the civilian market together with automotives. We have a fantastic tier 1 partner that we cannot disclose today, and we are now working towards the first real volume deals on the automotive side. It's really exciting times, and our vision is to leverage that one to bring automotive scale to the defense industry. And I think this is also one of the crucial things which needs to happen now in the European defense industry, moving from the hibernation of basically sustaining the defense companies and sustaining your defense forces into actually being ready for real deal activity. And for that one, you need to start thinking in scale, and you need to start moving to volume. Maybe the business case looks exactly the same for the defense forces on a purchase side, but it needs to grow so that the volume grows, so that the quality can improve, and then you can actually grow the industry to be able to manufacture in volume. Because if you're in this hibernation mode that most of the countries are still in Europe today, if shit hits the fan, it will not grow fast enough, and that will be a huge problem. Okay, so that was a short segue, but then getting back to our execution, we are really on the defense side. We are working on the validating the market fit, and we are now just right now going to DSEI in UK, which is Europe's biggest military exposition, on the 9th to 12th September. We are there together with 2 defense primes on their vehicles, fully integrated to them. We have been working on the command and control system integration, on the vehicle main computer integration. So we start to be in the level that data-wise, we have the capability to really fuse what the vehicle sees, what the battlefield situation is, and bring that in a harmonized manner to the driver or to the commander of the vehicle. And that's really exciting time. So being able to, for the first time, really publicly show what we can actually do. So in there, of course, understanding some faults in the thinking that always happens, but then most importantly, start building the relations to actually start working towards products to the market, not just technology, but the product itself. But we're still mainly in the let's validate that the technology market fit exists. Then let's have the right discussions. Then let's start working towards a real product, but not too soon, because otherwise you're just in your la-la land thinking that the soldier needs something, and you will be developing utterly the wrong thing, which is super cool and sci-fi and utterly useless. So that's something that we really want to avoid. And this is why we work deeply with the defense primes, because they have at least some conception of reality.
Oh, that always helps. some conception of reality. But can I just clarify that? So at the moment, you're seeing the defense sector as effectively almost that urgent buyer, right? That they are kind of driving some of the demand. And then you've got the larger automotive players that are not waiting in the wings, but effectively the volume that they probably need is way more. Yeah. And they're a little bit later down the chain. They may have a kind of a longer procurement process, or their needs are met. And you're kind of trying to execute against both parties. Yeah. Or is it different? Have I characterized it wrong?
No. Our point is to make sure that we can actually leverage the scale of the automotive side. So utilize much the same component, same supply chain, and then bring that also to the automotive side, which is why our Tier 1 partner happens to have a good fit also to the defense side. So that we can leverage also their production capability. As a startup, you cannot be executing everything. And for us, definitely building a mass production factory set is not in our, dream scenario, whether it is for defense industry or the automotive industry. And especially in automotive, you must be much more established player to have any chance of actually succeeding in volume, because the volumes are humongous.
Absolutely. So does that mean we're not going to see a gigafactory in Finland anytime soon?
Well, who knows? But we wouldn't want to do it. So
that's fine. Now, I know Vesa's been very patient and he wants to dive down a few of the rabbit holes. So Vesa, let's dive.
Yeah, maybe starting like coming from a little bit different angle. Obviously, there's a lot of these ethical concerns when you are selling to kind of for like selling military applications or for military applications. What's like how much you've been done like internal thinking and how much there's been actually a situations where you need to kind of balance between the ethical concerns and the commercial aspects. Like, has there been cases where you have had, some interest from someone that you don't want to sell?
Well, fortunately, we're not at that stage yet, but there are some of the areas that I'm really trying to be proactive about the especially employee fit to this kind of field. So in my previous company, Vario, we had in the very beginning of the company, we were focusing on 4 main industries, and defense was only like one part of one of those 4 industries. And then hence, of course, we had people who gravitated toward the vision, which was larger, architecture, for example, great potential for mixed reality devices to show how the future buildings will look like, and, iterate before you actually build and then make it as useful as possible. Great. Reality did not exist as market. We worked with the largest architecture agencies in the world and thought this will scale so well. And how many architecture agencies there are in Europe, like tens of thousands, epic market, right? No small agency had any possibility to have the time to make a 3D model on the quality level that it should be, so that you can actually use it as a conversation tool with customers. And yeah, great. Film industry, great idea, not market. So eventually, most of these other markets died out, like 2 major ones remained, automotive, design, and then defense training. Maybe a little bit of other aviation training as well. But between those times, the company transformed and started selling more and more to the defense industry. And some of the people realized that this is not the company I joined in, and this is not according to my values. I cannot anymore work in a company which is somehow engaged in defense industry, which I always thought, like, my utmost respect. You have strong convictions, and that's all really good. And it was my failure for not communicating that we might actually end up strongly in the defense ecosystem. At the same time, I didn't realize that would be the case either, some fairness. But this time from the get-go, we did intentionally want to go to the defense industry. So we have been really explicit to the people that, are you okay joining company which will ultimately make it more efficient to kill people? Because that's like where it ends up. And people need to be somehow comfortable with that idea, even though that's of course you could cushion that one and buffer it how much ever you want, but like getting to the bottom and really asking the question and making sure that people are fine with that one is super important. Otherwise, there will be, you know, issues later on. So that would be the like one of the areas that seems to create emotional response, at least with people.
Has there been a any visible change in that the kind of employees' attitude? Has that been changing over the past few years?
Yeah, I mean, our company is now roughly maybe 20 months old or something like that, and even though I would say that the world situation is not significantly different than it was 2 years ago, I think situation has only been getting worse in many ways in the world, and that seems to be reflecting with the attitudes of people who were maybe on little bit on the like undecided side on this particular question. They seem to be much more clarity that they're okay with what we are doing these days.
Look, and this is almost a question to both of you, because I was actually looking at the data behind the swing in public opinion here in Finland between pre-NATO, so basically before the invasion of Ukraine and after the invasion of Ukraine, right? And so generally, the data from 2018 was the earliest that they connected it all the way through, was the majority of the people were not in favor of joining NATO, and it was a don't poke the bear type strategy. Right. And then in between the autumn and the spring, opinion shifted 34%, which arguably, according to EVA, who collected the data, is the largest opinion swing in Finnish history. Yeah. And it was very much, okay, we've moved from don't poke the bear, don't make it worse, to actually we need friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you were both here. Was that what was happening on the ground? You know, was that the shift in that's the data, it aggregates at a population level? But you were both here. I wasn't living in Finland at that time.
I would assume that change happened overnight, like a single day, and that was the result. And I do remember that emotional, those were really difficult times, because Ukraine really is part of Europe, and it feels like this is not the way world should be, and suddenly you're trying to come to grips with that, what is happening. It feels so real. It feels not possible, really. And then watching those especially first days, first hours, like very emotional times.
And obviously you were deep in Varjo. No, actually you weren't in. Hold on. When did you leave Varjo? Do me a timeline. Are you still with Varjo?
2023. Yeah.
Okay. How did that change things for you guys? Or were you already heading in the defense?
Varjo had been gravitating towards U.S. Department of Defense being the largest market at that stage, or at least like an indirect customer. We had built manufacturing in Finland to a NATO certified facility that is capable of producing products for US classified installations. So we have been, doing that transition. So in that sense, nothing much changed. Maybe the biggest one was that Europe finally started waking up that they would also be a market, because I can't even remember a split, but probably 90% market in USA, 10% Europe, something like that. And I think it's still in that kind of figures. And obviously it should not be like a training of the new pilots, new soldiers, equally important on both sides of the pond. And the force sizes would be roughly equal anyway. So there shouldn't be that large divide between the sales, but the hibernation is real in Europe.
Is it because we have this really bad winter and everyone goes to sleep? No. Jokes aside, let's just compare the contrast the two. So obviously, Varjo had one mission, Distance Tech has another mission. How do they differ for you? And could you have kind of almost built Distance Tech's mission from inside Vario, or was this a question of kind of, no, they're not complementary, I needed to spin out and I needed to do this other thing because the technology stack, I don't know, the amount of compute was available, something had changed in the world that you could take advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, Vario is about training people in office-like environments that are safe, secure, and you don't have any environmental problems in there. Distance is all about field activities, going to the mud, going to the dirt, working in minus 40 degrees centigrade temperatures, and completely different environment. And then not about simulating an activity, but making you aware of activity, like enhancing your thinking process, your reaction times, and your reaction logic, and it's completely different thing what you're actually trying to achieve. Maybe there are some synergies, like yes, there's graphics involved with both. Yes, there are, optics and displays or projectors or whatnot. But again, those I get back to what I was saying in the beginning, that it's just technology. It's about like, what do you want to achieve with technology is what's important. And that makes it totally different company. Everything has screws. It doesn't make everything is the same.
The way you were describing it very much reminds me of that famous advert, I don't know if you ever saw, that Shackleton placed when he was basically going to do the endurance expedition in the South Pole. And he just basically just went, hardship, minus 40, polar bears, you're gonna die, chance of survival, slim, please apply.
Like, he love it.
Like, it was the kind of Elon Musk hardcore mode of the, whenever it was, South Pole, race. And it was like selling hardship. And there was a little bit of that speech there in terms of like, we got to go forward, deploy these systems. We're going to be in the mud. It's going to be cold. The thing's going to break. We're going to pull an all-nighter. We're going to fix it on that side. No, super. Love it. Sell hardship. That's the only way to do it on that particular side. Just out of interest, because obviously Vario has been successful and has what I would say has created a kind of a lovely alumni across Finland, where they're starting to percolate into other companies, notably ISI. To me, that's the natural cycle. SpaceX had to do its thing, and then those people had to prove that they could put rockets up reversibly, and that allowed Palantir and Anduril and all these other companies, Base Energy, to form. Is that one of the legacies of Vario, is that we did a very hard thing? Yeah, and therefore the alumni built credibility in this defense and other spaces, so these other companies can then potentially reach further.
Maybe you're right. I think a lot of course, respect to Nokia and Microsoft for building this like a legacy of being able to do the most advanced hardware in the world, in the Nordics. And I think we are kind of like reaping the benefits of those years still, as in most of the countries of the world, you would never even imagine doing a hardware startup. And today, that's of course one of the advantages, is that if you know that you can pull off also difficult hardware things, and then you can complement it with software, AI, and optics know-how, for example, then you can do something that most of the people, most of the companies wouldn't even dream starting to do. So that's a great competitive advantage, I think. And then looking into what you were referring to, Vario's legacy, I think you're spot on in the sense that the startup ecosystem, which again, I would attribute greatly to Slush organization, greatly to Supercell, Ilkka Paananen, who has been helping that foster and grow. I think Vario was kind of in the place of getting the value from both of those directions. And then the new people just realize how easy it is to make startups and succeed with those. So then they're so foolish that they actually start doing it themselves.
Yeah, but look, I think there's definitely a theme there, and I agree with what you just said. I think there's a theme there around sometimes harder is easier, right? Everyone used to say hardware is hard, don't touch it, go do a B2B SaaS app, up and to the right, it's fine. But we've done a lot of B2B SaaS apps, and that isn't going to defend Ukraine. It isn't going to protect Europe, right? Accounting software can only take you so far. The advantage of hard plus software plus AI, mix it all together, vertically integrate those systems, is not everybody can do them. There's less competition, and therefore there is that opportunity to create those high leverage. Look, no disrespect, TSMC and NVIDIA are not software companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're doing pretty well on that side. I wanted to dig into one area. We talked vision and we've talked people. What about the capital side? So how has kind of raising money been for you? You've got that serial entrepreneur, main character energy that you can kind of draw on. That helps. But what's the capital markets like? And then what's your view around like equity versus debt, those sort of approaches? Like, no disrespect, when Uber went public, Travis Kalanick, I think he owned about 18% of Uber when it went public. Whereas Elon, because he's mad, no disrespect, he owns about 45% of SpaceX. SpaceX is capital intensive on capital intensive. Uber was capital intensive because of operations. Yet he ended up owning more of that company on, it's not IPO'd, but it's way past that stage now, than the B2B SaaS app.
Yeah.
So what's your view on that capital requirement? How easy has it been? Equity, debt? What are your thoughts there?
So I'll have to start with that. I obviously don't have the resources of Elon, like whether they are monetary resources or anything like that. And I think he took huge personal risk on building the SpaceX and leverage the money he had been acquiring on the previous startups and place those bets beautifully. Like hat tip for him for making that possible. Like that's on the level that countries cannot succeed. No country has been able to do what that team did in a couple of years for next to no budget on the grand scheme of things. So like incredible work overall. For us, the market has been really good in the sense that, as you said, returning founders typically find it easier to raise money. We raised, was it double or triple our asking on the first pre-seed round, and then double what we were planning to do on the seed round. So things were easier than I thought in many ways. But the market overall still seems to be problematic overall. I think the doing big rounds really difficult in Europe. I see some of the interesting things in this field that, for example, Daniel Ek invested personally quite a huge chunk of money, almost $500 million.
100 million in Spotify's, Helsing's, whatever it was.
Helsing, yeah, exactly.
Round, for want of a better word.
Yeah, so and I think it's a great sign that probably that money wasn't easy to get by. Like, yes, I do think Daniel is doing a great favor to the European defense ecosystem, but in all honesty, there should have been some fund in Europe which would have been able to place the same bet. And I would assume, without knowing, that that would have been the preferred strategy for Helsing. But that has been for quite some time the problem, that in Europe you have a glass ceiling in the sense that maybe beyond the $500 million to $1 billion valuation, you will have almost impossible time to find new investors from Europe. I'm not saying that's a problem for us right now, not quite there yet.
Not quite there. Almost.
At that level. Soon, but it's one of the huge problems. The liquidity, the money does not exist in the venture market here. We have in Europe insane amounts of money for a lot of other investment activities, but not in the venture market, and that's a crying shame, obviously.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely seeds are changing on that front. You look at someone like Bailey Gifford, who is arguably one of the best growth stage investors in the world. They have positions in SpaceX, Tesla, everybody else. 280 billion assets under management. That is not small. They may be very quiet for an Edinburgh, UK-based firm, but that is not a small amount. That's sovereign wealth fund territory. And they've made now investments in defense. right? They've made a big investment in Tekava. I'm hopeful I'm pronouncing those right. The Portuguese autonomous drone company, in partnership or in the same round as the NATO investment fund. So, and I think that's critical because they've shown that they can make a responsible investing decision. Yeah. And I think they were very open on this, that they decided that security went above ESG and they would not be able to, and they were one of the poster boys for ESG investing, that they could not deliver on ESG if we weren't able to secure borders in Europe, right? If we were not able to effectively reduce these hybrid attacks that are happening, oops, I forgot to, lift my anchor up as I, take my ship down the Baltic type stuff. Oh, your undersea cable has been cut. Unless we were able to do that and protect Europe, there was that. But they've led, and that's been great to see on that particular side. Vesa, you've been quiet. Go for you.
Yeah, going back to your fundraising, again, like I'd be curious to know, like, how has the VC community, like, how have they reacted? You're raising money for a hardware company. Like, has there been a difference between Finnish, European, and US VCs? Like, I have the feeling that probably the Finnish VCs might overlook hardware. So how do you see that, or what's your experience?
I think I'll walk back a few years when I was doing fundraising for Varjo, and we on every single round did a couple of US trips, and with quite a few of the prestigious investors invited us to their offices to show the stuff, and we might even end up demoing to like everybody in their community, and then they go like, "Thanks for coming." And did we mention that we don't invest in European startups or hardware or pre-revenue, where we define pre-revenue as sub 100 million? And I think there was a fourth one.
And we don't like.
But anyway,
that would be the other thing.
That could be like we have never invested in Finland.
In a Finnish company,
never will. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be surprised if that was it, but I think it was something else. But we got roughly the same message. Of course, you know how it is with VCs. Like, what they tell you is different, so they just didn't feel like doing it, and then you get some sort of a comfort treatment on what went wrong. It's fine, but doing that one in Europe seemed to be like even more difficult, especially 5 years ago. Like, exactly as you said, like SaaS. Are you a SaaS company was the like main question that everybody would ask, and if you're not SaaS, then that would be the only question they would drop you off on. So relatively difficult to raise funds a few years back on the hardware. Now I think the situation has changed dramatically, and now every VC is thinking that now on the Gen AI, how can you defend software-only solutions? How can you actually, like, whatever you have done, why wouldn't anybody be able to replicate that on a weekend? And then if their stronger team have more capital, why wouldn't they be able to conquer the market, even if you would have a little bit of headway, the full weekend of headway? Realizing that doing hardware and, as you said, doing some of the hard things is actually an advantage, because it's not quite easy, at least today, to replicate over a weekend. So, and I do think that starts being visible on the VC market now. There's much more interest on the hardware element, and especially once you can actually combine like a significant software element with the hardware, it kind of means that it's a little bit more difficult for sweatshops in China to replicate you overnight. And then you have the software only companies who also won't be able to compete with you. So it reduces the amount of potential companies who could compete with you. Samsung will be able to compete, Apple will be able to compete, many Chinese, Xiaomi and so forth would be able to compete with whatever you do. But would they? And absolutely. In defense, they would not. In defense, they would not, obviously.
They would not. There was not. There's definitely been before January 2025, after January 2025, vibe shift in that particular space. I also think there's definitely a west of Warsaw, east of Warsaw thing going on. You know, those of us who live closer to the Russian border are a bit more focused on that particular area than those who live further away on that side. But also, I think it's also across the board, right? It's that whole security isn't just the battlefield, it's the long border, it's effectively the energy installation, it's the material sovereignty, right? I'm not talking rare earth metals. It's like, can you get steel? Can you get aluminium? Do we actually have these capabilities here on that particular side? And I think that's another particular challenge to look for. One other quick question I've got for you, just as we get towards wrapping up, is why does European founders retire as quick? They seem to, right? You know, people tend to get a one hit. Yeah, they have a good exit. They get a boat, they get a summer cottage. They don't want to eat peanuts on the plane on the way to Paris, etc., etc. You know, why did they stop? Whereas American founders seem to have this kind of, maybe they've all had an Elon chip already. They just keep going, right? You know, they just keep going, company after company after company. What do we think's happening there?
Yeah, why do they do it to themselves?
Maybe they can't get a summer cottage.
I'm sure plenty of them also enjoy the good moments in life every now and then, but Europeans seem to be enjoying it for longer periods of time at a time. I had a great conversation about this with one of the partners at Equity Ventures, and he had a Swedish founder. He had been at the dinner with this person on the previous night, and the founder was 8-time founder, and he was just coming to this partner for a meeting and asking, I can't remember, 15 million, something like that, you know, pre-seed money for a repeat founder. And he had nobody else. He had just an idea, and he would want to have this kind of money. And the list was that they would want to have really nice place. They would need to have like this beautiful art piece in the lobby that cost $1 million and so forth. And his point was that I know how this goes. I need the absolute best people, and they need to lose their shit when they enter the building. They need to be having a feeling that this is a journey I will not miss. And I think that's one of the things that maybe we are too content with our lives and not wanting that next adventure quite enough. And Americans, they're so adventurous people, and you know, the new frontier from their past, and maybe that's the thing, they need that next thing always to exist, and we far too easily get content with what we have in Europe. We shouldn't, maybe.
And maybe it's something even simpler. Like, I generally, having lived and worked in the States, run my own company there, I feel living in the States is actually quite hardcore, right? Living in the States isn't actually that nice. Sorry, Americans. It just isn't. Most of the cities suck. The infrastructure is bad, right? The fact that when you cancel your phone contract with Verizon, they send you a check next quarter. A check, right? Not bank transfers. It's actually pretty rubbish, right? Now, business is flipping easier. Single market, massive consumer base, loads of businesses, everybody works with you. So it's kind of like life is not that great. Business is on like easier mode. And in Europe, I think we just have the reverse. I think living in Europe is just better, right? We have great cities, great history, great culture, access to nature, trees, blah, blah, blah. It's nicer. I wouldn't swip. Doing business in Europe is harder, right? It's like hardcore mode on the business, easier on the lifestyle. So it's kind of like, you know, I think there's a question of, if you've made a bit of money in America and then you come back and you're like, actually, this is still pretty bad, you know, domestically, let me go off and make some more money so I can buy in someplace in Hawaii. Anyway, look, I'm starting to rant. Vesa, let's bring it home. What's your final question?
Yeah, I'd be curious to know, besides Distance Tech, who else are building in this domain or investing in this domain? Because we believe the founders, people like you, have the best access to the people?
So I haven't been raising now, so then I wouldn't have that like a fresh point of view onto like a fully who is investing right now. I would say that the most interesting companies at the moment are satellite companies in Europe. I think the space sovereignty is highly important for the data, for the access to space. I think all of these companies, we should be investing so much money in Europe in these companies. European Space Agency, great organization, but they have also been a little bit too long in a like a low pressure situation, and I think they need at least the startup community to invigorate them, but maybe only the startup community can actually raise to the challenge. So that's huge area in the sovereignty domain that I have the utmost respect for all the satellite companies in Europe.
These companies like Reorbit, Couva Space, and ISI, and those sort of people, or are you thinking elsewhere?
I mean, those definitely, all of those, but all the companies who are also doing the like initial stages of the rocket systems. I haven't been too much following that domain, but I think it is the most crucial domain that Europe should be investing right now overall, both from the public funding, but also private.
You mean we shouldn't just rely on SpaceX for 97% of launches off the surface of planet Earth? You know, putting eggs all in one basket might not be the best idea.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like it's always good to have some backup. I mean, at the same time, huge respect to those guys. Yeah. Like I cannot believe what they have achieved and done, but still, like from sovereignty perspective, you cannot fully trust other nations.
No, I think you can't. Ever. And it's not, again, we've thought about this quite a lot. It's not like this is an anti-SpaceX points because we're big SpaceX fans. I think the challenge is there's no competition, right? Forget Blue Origin, etc., space tourism. There's just not enough competition. There is starting to have some people coming through in the US in terms of basically getting stuff off the planet's surface. And we just need to do more of that. And Europe needs to control its own basically airspace, space as well. Not for kind of flag waving issues, but just because we should actually control our own destiny. Yeah, be able to, GPS gets turned off. Actually, how do we manage? Look, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you, Colin.
We are big fans of Distance Tech. We look forward to you executing perfectly for the next 10 years and nothing absolutely going wrong whatsoever, and billions of revenue in a TSMC sort of valuation will be created. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. To make sure you catch us again, please follow us on your favorite podcasting platform.